Some towns vanish because of time, others because something drove people away. Across America, there are places that were once full of life now left in silence, shadow, and superstition. But in these three towns, something never left. A forest where people went mad, a street where the earth still breathes heat, and a ghost town where even stealing a nail might follow you home. These aren't just ruins, they're warnings. Case 1. Dudleytown, the town of darkness. There's a place in Connecticut where silence has a shape. It lies deep within the woods of Litchfield County, tucked behind winding roads and overgrown trails. No signs point the way. GPS often fails. But those who seek it out call it by one name: Dudleytown. To the untrained eye, it looks like any patch of quiet forest, just moss-broken stone walls and rustling trees. But beneath the leaves and loam, there's a history that locals refuse to touch. And for good reason. The origins of Dudleytown go back to the early 1740s, when settlers began to move into the area known as Cornwall, Connecticut. Among the first were members of the Dudley family, descendants of an English noble line once entangled in the brutal politics of the Tudor monarchy. According to legend, the Dudleys had been cursed generations earlier, beginning with Edmund Dudley, who was beheaded for treason during the reign of King Henry VII. His descendants, the story claims, carried a dark misfortune with them wherever they went. Some say the curse was one of madness. Others say it was simply death. But in Dudleytown, the stories found fertile ground. At first, the settlement seemed no different from others. Families built modest homes, cleared fields, and raised livestock. The soil was rocky but workable. The forests were dense but filled with game. But over the next century, something strange happened. People started to leave, not because of drought, not because of war, but because of something harder to name. It began with illness, then strange disappearances, then whispers of madness. One man returned home to find his wife had lost touch with reality and taken her own life. Another vanished without a trace on a short walk to a neighbor's home. Livestock died overnight without wounds or warning. Crops rotted from the inside. Neighbors stopped visiting. Families began moving away. By the mid-1800s, Dudleytown was mostly empty. By the 1900s, it was gone. But the stories didn't end. If anything, they only grew stronger in the absence of light. Over the next century, hikers, journalists, and thrill-seekers began to venture into the ruins. They returned with stories that defied easy explanation. Some reported overwhelming nausea the moment they entered the woods, only to feel fine again once they left. Others spoke of seeing shadows darting between trees even when alone. Some claimed to hear whispers, low, unintelligible voices that seemed to come from the ground itself. And then there were the sudden losses. Photographers who lost all images from their visit. Campers who returned to find their equipment destroyed. In one case, a perfectly healthy man who visited the site for an overnight stay suffered a complete mental breakdown within 24 hours, diagnosed with acute psychosis, with no prior history of illness. All of them had one thing in common: they had visited Dudleytown. One of the most well-known accounts came from a man named Horace Greeley, a 19th century journalist and political figure. His wife reportedly took her own life after a brief stay near the area. Friends described a sudden, unexplainable shift in her demeanor after visiting the woods. Another story involves a group of paranormal investigators who attempted an overnight study in the 1980s. According to their report, they heard movement surrounding them throughout the night, footsteps, without source whispers, without bodies. Their equipment failed. One member never returned to the site again. He refused to speak about what he saw. Some believe it's just folklore. Others are certain it's something worse. What makes Dudleytown especially eerie is the absence of tangible remains. Unlike most ghost towns, there are no full buildings here. No creaking barns or broken windows. Only low stone foundations swallowed by moss, the occasional rusted nail, and silence so thick it hums. Even the animals seem to avoid it. Birdsong fades as you enter. Insects grow still. The trees themselves bend inward, forming a canopy so tight that daylight struggles to reach the forest floor. Locals say the birds never nest in Dudleytown, that dogs whimper when taken near the trail, that compasses spin without cause, that some people simply disappear. In 1993, a hiker named John Brophy reportedly entered the area with two friends. They planned a short trek and a night of stargazing. Only one returned. According to the survivor, they had set up camp near the old Dudleytown foundations. As night fell, a heavy fog rolled in, despite no forecast of rain or low pressure. The air became thick, the silence total. One friend claimed he saw a figure near the trees, a tall, still silhouette that didn't move. They called out. It vanished. Within minutes, John was gone. The area was searched for 3 days. Dogs were brought in. Helicopters circled the forest, but no trace of him was ever found. His tent, his bag, even his flashlight still sitting neatly by the cold fire pit. Authorities ruled it a disappearance. The others called it something else. Today, Dudleytown is closed to the public. The land is privately owned by the Dark Entry Forest Association, an organization that exists solely to protect the area from trespassers. Signs line the roads. Patrols watch for visitors. There are no tours, no maps. Why so secretive? Some say it's to preserve the fragile ecosystem. Others believe it's because the stories are true. One local once said, "It's not what you see in Dudleytown that stays with you. It's what follows you out." Skeptics argue there's nothing supernatural about it, that the soil was too poor for farming, that families left because they couldn't survive, that the tales of madness were no worse than any rural area in early America. But here's what makes Dudleytown different. People still go there, and people still report the same things. Static in the ears, sudden nausea, feelings of being watched, hearing footsteps behind you when no one's there, batteries that drain instantly, time that feels out of sync, and the dreams. So many report the same dream after visiting: a house with no doors, a forest with no wind, a name they don't remember learning whispered in the dark. Dudleytown isn't just a place. It's a void, a hollow on the map where something settled long ago, something that didn't leave. It's not dramatic. It doesn't scream. It waits. And those who find it often say the same thing when they return. I didn't see anything. I just knew I shouldn't have been there. Case 2, Centralia. The town that burns. Below. Some towns die, quietly faded signs, closed shops, families who packed up and moved on. Centralia didn't have that kind of ending. It didn't fade. It burned. And it's still burning. Deep beneath the cracked roads and collapsing homes of this Pennsylvania coal town, a fire has been smoldering since 1962. It's not the kind of fire you can put out. It doesn't roar. It doesn't spread through trees or buildings. It burns the ground itself. And for over 6 decades, it's made Centralia one of the eeriest and emptiest places in America. The story begins with a problem. By the early 1960s, Centralia had been a mining town for over a century. The coal beneath it was abundant, and the mines brought jobs, families, and life. But when the coal began to run out, so did the money. One solution: use an abandoned mine pit as a landfill. One mistake: try to burn the trash inside it. In May 1962, local authorities lit a small fire inside a mine cavity to clean up accumulated garbage. It wasn't supposed to last. They poured water. They thought it was out. It wasn't. The fire slipped through an open seam in the rock, caught a coal vein, and vanished underground. And it kept going. What makes Centralia's fire different is where it burns. Not on the surface, but through coal seams buried 300 feet below. Invisible, persistent, feeding on miles of interconnected tunnels carved by decades of mining. For the first few years, residents didn't notice much. A few hot spots, strange smells, a haze on certain mornings. But then the ground started to change. Grates in the street began spewing smoke. Snow melted in perfect circles. Trees died from the roots up. Yards grew warm to the touch in winter. And then, in 1979, gas station owner John Coddington inserted a fuel dipstick into his underground tank and found the fuel reading 170 degrees Celsius. That same year, several children playing in a backyard were overcome by carbon monoxide. But the incident that changed everything came in 1981. A boy named Todd Domboski was playing in his grandmother's yard when the earth opened beneath his feet. A sinkhole, sudden, hot, and silent, swallowed him whole. He clung to a root, screaming as sulphurous steam rose from the hole. His cousin managed to pull him out. The ground where he fell was over 300 degrees Fahrenheit. Authorities finally had to admit what locals had long feared: Centralia was no longer safe to live in. Evacuations began slowly. Some residents refused to leave, convinced the danger was exaggerated. Others couldn't afford to relocate. Some simply didn't want to abandon their childhood homes. But the signs were impossible to ignore. Sidewalks cracked, roads buckled, gas built up in basements, yards glowed red at night. Even tombstones in the local cemetery shifted from heat underground. By 1992, the state of Pennsylvania claimed eminent domain over all properties. Buildings were condemned. Homes were bulldozed. Block by block, the town was erased. But the fire remained. And it still burns silently, carving new paths, consuming what's left of the town from below. Today, Centralia has fewer than 5 residents. There are no stores, no schools, no police. The post office closed in 2002. Zip code 17927 was officially retired. What remains is something out of a fever dream. A main road, Route 61, cracked down the middle, steam rising from long fissures. Locals call it Graffiti Highway. It's technically closed, but thrill seekers still find ways in. They leave their names, their tags, and sometimes they don't stay long. Visitors report sudden disorientation, headaches, the sense of being watched. The deep silence, no birds, no wind, just a low hum from nowhere. And then there's the heat. Beneath your feet, you feel it not like a campfire, but like something angry and patient, something that's been there a long, long time. What adds to Centralia's unnerving reputation is the folklore that's grown around it. Some say the fire wasn't just an accident, that it was a mistake the town was meant to pay for. That beneath the mines were burial sites, sacred grounds, from long before the settlers arrived. That strange things happened in Centralia long before the fire. Shadowy figures, disappearances, voices in the mines. Miners spoke of hearing whispers in empty shafts, calls by name when no one was there. One claimed he saw lights dancing deep underground, moving too fast and too smooth to be lanterns. Was it superstition? Or was it something older than coal? The town's story inspired books, documentaries, and even horror films. In fact, the video game and movie Silent Hill borrowed heavily from Centralia's aesthetic: abandoned buildings, fog rolling through dead streets, and something just beneath the surface. But unlike fiction, Centralia doesn't need monsters. Its horror is quiet. It seeps. You walk its roads and know that the ground beneath you is hollow, that at any moment it could give way. That heat rises from the earth, and no one knows when or if it will ever stop. The last scientific estimate predicted that the fire could continue for another 250 years. That means long after every home is gone, every sign taken down, and every story forgotten, the fire will still be there, slowly consuming the veins of a town that tried to burn its past and failed. People still visit. Some out of curiosity, some out of defiance, some looking for the line between fact and legend. What they find is something colder than silence and warmer than fear. They find a town that no longer lives, but refuses to die. Case 3. Bodie, the ghost town that curses thieves. In the high desert hills of eastern California, not far from the Nevada border, there is a place where time stopped. Wind whistles through broken windows, rusted wagons sit frozen in dust, and the silence feels expectant. This is Bodie, a gold rush town turned ghost town, preserved almost perfectly since the late 1800s. But Bodie isn't famous just for its frozen buildings. It's famous for something else, something no one can explain. They call it the curse. Bodie was born in blood and gold. In 1859, a prospector named W.S. Bodie discovered gold in the hills nearby. He died in a snowstorm just months later, but the town that grew from his claim would bear his name, Bodie. By the late 1870s, Bodie exploded into life. More than 10,000 people rushed in miners, gamblers, storekeepers, and outlaws. 25 saloons lined its dusty streets. Opium dens, brothels, and gunfights were part of daily life. One little girl, upon arriving in town, reportedly wrote in her diary, "Goodbye, God, I'm going to Bodie." It was rough. It was lawless. It was alive. But gold towns burn fast. By the early 1900s, the gold veins began to dry. Fires destroyed entire blocks. Harsh winters and economic collapse drove families away. By 1940, Bodie was officially abandoned. But it didn't die. Today, Bodie is a state historic park, preserved in a state of arrested decay. That means nothing is restored, only stabilized. Walk down Main Street and you'll see houses with dishes still on the tables, general stores with items still on the shelves, schoolrooms with chalk still on the boards. It's like everyone left in a hurry and never looked back. Tourists come by the thousands to walk its streets, peek into the windows, and photograph the frozen past. But some take more than pictures. And that's where the curse begins. According to park rangers, something strange started happening decades ago. People who had pocketed a nail, a rock, a coin, or anything from the town began sending them back, by mail, with letters that read like confessions. Some wrote about losing jobs, some about broken relationships, car crashes, illness, divorce, unexplained streaks of misfortune, and nearly all of them ended the same way. "Please take this back. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have taken it." Park staff began collecting the returned items in a box. Today, that box holds hundreds of objects and hundreds of letters. From all over the world. Some letters are short. "It was just a nail. I didn't think it mattered." Others are long, describing downward spirals that began the day they took something from Bodie. Not everyone believes the curse is real, but few are willing to test it. The rangers have a rule. Take only pictures, leave only footprints, and whatever you do, don't take anything else. What makes Bodie different is how many of the stories are documented. This isn't just folklore passed by word of mouth. The park has kept records of the returned items and the dates they were mailed back. Some even arrived in person, delivered quietly without a word left on ranger station steps. One letter from Italy reads, "My father took a rock in 1995. He died 2 months later. My mother always said it was Bodie. Please accept this return. We never meant harm." Another letter from Ohio. "We took a piece of wood from the jail. Since then, my son's been in an accident. My business failed. I can't sleep. Please, I beg you, take it back." Even seasoned rangers admit they don't understand it, but they respect it. One former ranger shared this story. A woman visited the park with her fiancé. He took a horseshoe nail as a souvenir despite her objections. Within 3 months, they'd broken off the engagement. His car was stolen. He lost his job. He returned the nail by mail alone. Another ranger spoke of a man who returned a rock with no letter, just one line scribbled on the envelope. "I can't live like this anymore." Skeptics say the curse is just coincidence. That guilt makes people connect dots that aren't there, that life is random and bad things happen. But then why does it happen so consistently? Why does it only start after they take something, and why does it stop when they send it back? Local legend says the curse doesn't come from Bodie itself, but from those who died there. Bodie had its share of violence. Shootings were common. Miners died in cave-ins. Children were buried in frost-bitten graves. The jail overflowed. The cemetery is still full. Some believe the souls that remain are simply watching, that they don't mind you visiting, but they do mind you stealing. Even today, park rangers leave warnings in plain sight. Signs at the visitor center, messages on the brochure, reminders in every tour. Do not take anything, not even a pebble. Some things don't want to leave. Bodie looks dead, but it isn't. It holds its breath. It remembers. And if you disturb it even just a little, it might disturb you back. 3 towns, Three curses still echoing in silence. Some places fall apart. Others, remember who walked their streets. If stories like these stay with you, subscribe to Roadside Tales for more.